What's your best this person clearly does not know what he's talking about story. Guy told me about this chick he met online. She said she'd meet him if he would only join a date verification site first. For your information, there are no legitimate date verification sites. They are all scams. He put in his credit card number, made the account, and suddenly, she didn't want to frick him anymore. He still thinks she got cold feet. Overheard two guys around my age talking about making quick money flipping homes. One standout line was, "You only need like 20k for the down payment and then you can fix up the house with like 10k and sell it for like 150k and your profit is like 120k. That's not how it works at all. These are the people that go to weekend seminars. I have a twin brother, I am female, and I've countless arguments with people about 1. You can't be twins because you're not identical. 2. You can have identical boy-girl twins. Neither of these are true. I promise my brother and I were wombats. Me and my sister are identical twins. We shared the same amniotic sac etc. and had testing done to confirm. But we have like a 30-pound weight difference and do our hair and makeup difference. So PPL argue with us that we are not identical twins, that we are simply confused and that we are fraternal. I was born in '82 but my dad fought in World War II. Weird, I know. When I was in 5th grade I had a really crap of a teacher. When she found out that my dad had died a few years before, something that I had kept to myself because I was bullied a lot and didn't want to give those monsters any fresh ammo, she asked me in front of the class if my dad died in World War II, a war which ended in 1945, nearly 40 years before I was born. I slowly told her that he had not died then because that would make me about 45 years old. She stared at me like I was an idiot. I really hated her. Heard a story about a mom who thought WTF meant with the family, so all of her Facebook posts seemed to use it incorrectly. At Disney World, WTF at the pool, WTF etc. I'm a comedian. Went on a date with a girl once who brought up that she was a singer, dancer, actress and comedian. When I told her I also did comedy, she responded with, "Oh well, I'm not really the funny type of comedian. I'm just the confident type, you know? Yes I do. That means you're a bad comedian." Oh well, I'm not really the funny type of comedian, but was working at a provincial park in southern Alberta, in the Badlands. A guy came up to tell me all about the kangaroo he'd seen. I tried to explain that kangaroos don't live in North America, but he was adamant that that was what he'd seen, because what else bounds up and down like that? A deer. A deer does that. It was a freaking deer. There's a kangaroo farm in Kelowna. Maybe he accidentally went to Kelowna and visited the kangaroo farm. Shortly before the Xbox 360 came out, I overheard some kids at school talking about how awesome it was going to be to have a console with 4D graphics. That's the burning smell coming from the 360. He's not wrong, just a bit mislead. One of my dorm mates in my freshman year of college was a compulsive liar. He'd lie about everything for no reason. I talked to him a lot about music but never knew when he was telling the truth. So eventually, I made up a wholly unique band name, looked online for any instance of the name existing, and brought it up to him. He claimed to have their first 2 albums, but said the first was better than the second, and he was looking forward to their concert in a few months. I told him that I just made up the band and they don't exist. I think he just walked away. Sat with my uncle who keeps on yapping about how any food bought from outside is unhealthy. Went on to say he had read some research conducted by experienced scientists that concluded any food which is not made at home produces cancer in the body. Everybody knows that homes are antimicrobial and so prevent cancer-causing parasites. I overheard 2 guys saying that they could get rich on free oil by detonating kitchen oil in a barrel with fireworks. Shoulder stuck around for the show. Heard a guy telling a kid that Einstein had Down syndrome, but he was a genius because he could use 9% of his brain while the rest of us can only use 6%. Where do people even hear this crap to tell it? At least he changed the numbers from the usual bulls. Teacher at International Middle School in Korea, in the US. You can buy an average car for $300,000. Me raising hand. Don't you mean $30,000? Teacher. No. $300,000. Fast forward 3 weeks to teacher parent meeting day. Teacher, your son has a problem talking back to me in class. Hated that bee. I was doing a magic trick on the bar. I placed 2 objects a couple feet apart, set a cigarette between them. Then while hovering my hand between the 2 objects, the cigarette follows every hand movement. I'm making the cigarette dance. Some guy watching announces he's an engineering major and goes on to tell everyone how I'm doing it. I've created a magnetic field between the salt and pepper shaker, and there must be metal shavings in the cigarette. I just smiled and told him he's obviously very smart. What I resisted telling him was how the trick actually worked. I was blowing it, dickhead. I knew a guy in high school who was, shall we say, a little off. He once spent 30 minutes trying to convince me that he was this super hacker. He claimed that he overclocked his modem to run at T1 speeds. I can't remember exactly how he claimed he did it, but it involved submerging some component of his computer in coolant and running it. I think he failed to remember that I did homework with his brother at their house and had seen their internet connection. It was AOL dial-up. In a way it was kinda sad because he would always make up these sorts of stories, I suspect to be accepted by his older brother's friends. There was a guy in my area running for CA State Assembly. He was asked a question about how to curb domestic violence and he went off on a rant about medicinal marijuana for 5 minutes. Then the next guy in line to ask a question was a cop who said, I've been a police officer for 14 years. I get called out on a few domestic violence calls a week. Not once in 14 years has someone being high on marijuana been the cause. Nor has it been a contributing factor in any domestic violence calls I have ever heard of. The guy who was running for office looked at him and his face turned bright red and he said, you obviously aren't a real cop. So the cop pulled out his badge and the guy walked off the stage. He was muttering something to himself but I couldn't hear him. Then the cop leaned into the mic and said, I didn't get to ask my question yet, sir? Double quote. The whole place started laughing. Out of all of the potential ways to balls your way out of that one, you're not a real cop is the worst. I work in IT for an ONG. A contractor came to assist with a hardware problem with a piece of equipment we purchased. As he was getting his laptop set up, I asked if he needed to be connected to the network. He said, no, I don't plug into companies' networks. That's how you get viruses. I just connect to any Wi-Fi that is available. Sigh. And of course, he couldn't fix the problem. I had to get remote help from the company and it was missing a plug and I was unaware it needed. Even if you connect to Wi-Fi, you should still wrap your laptop in a large condom, just to be on the safe side. A friend once heard someone drop a line about being a Royal Air Force tornado pilot during a chat-up attempt. The dude even told the attractive young lady what squadron he flew with, as part of spinning her a tale about how he was basically Mav from Top Gun. My friend was polite enough to wait until she went to the bathroom to ask the young gentleman what his name was and why he didn't recognize him, considering he was the squadron leader of the squadron the dude had named. Nicked Valor. Had one mini muffin with poppy seeds, then later had a random drug test at work. Surprise, surprise, the test came back positive for opiates. I told the nurse that I had a poppy seed muffin, and she said that's a myth. Also, poppy seeds make you test positive for THC. WTF. You're a medical practitioner and you don't know that poppy seeds make you positive for opiates? Opiates literally come from poppy plants. I failed for opiates because I went on a huge binge of everything bagels. I asked this girl if she believed euthanasia should be legalized for not only the terminally but every human being. She told me no because I think it's disrespectful to all the dead people who have died when they didn't want to. Had a world foods class with this butthole know-it-all. Like, any topic he was the freaking genius on it. When going through a sideshow about Finland and its food and culture, he insisted to everyone that reindeer were not real. My wife has to ask me about narwhals every now and then. Narwhals are real, honey, right? I can never remember. Yeah, I was a helicopter pilot in the SAS. That was after I transferred from the Marines. Sure, trooper Mitty, why not? Saw the guy I went to high school with at a wedding. and he was talking about this new custom PC he was going to build. Said he was saving for an ultra high-end CPU. He was talking about the i7 5960X, although he didn't know what it was called, so he could run all his really advanced word processing editing software. I called him out on it without even meaning to. I just assumed I was misunderstanding what he was saying. Nope. He wanted a 5960X and 64GB RAM to take his book editing side business to the next level. In case you're not into computers, that's like saving up for a dump truck so you can haul your suitcase around. Great analogy. I was in a pawn shop looking at ARs and this guy says it comes with a 45 round magazine, then hands me the obviously 30 RD magazine. I say this is a 30. He says no look, 5.56x45. Trust me, I was in the military. It said 30 at the bottom, but he was still convinced. I'll buy every AR you have if you can fit 45 5.56 rounds in this magazine. Well, I've seen a bunch of conspiracy nuts on Facebook constantly talk about how Obama is secretly going to anoint himself king of the USA. Most of my stories though are when I used to be a manager of an electronics boutique, later EB Games before they were bought out by GameStop. Customers used to come in with all types of stories on how or why games were cancelled or programmers left, etc. The worst though was a lady came in my store one day asking for Diddy Kong Racing for the PlayStation. After explaining as to how and why that game doesn't exist in the PSX, she told me that it does exist and she's seen it being sold at JCPenney. I told her to buy it from there and come back and show me and I'll pay her twice as much as she paid for the game plus she keeps the game. I never saw her again. Deepak Chopra. Nobody compares to his ignorance when it comes to physics. He fundamentally misunderstands every single fact he spouts out about anything even remotely related to physics. I've met 4-year-olds who understand the concepts Chopra talks about better than he does. And he makes gazillions from it. Don't think for a second that he doesn't know he's spouting crap. He's laughing at the rubes while he does it. New guy at work was talking about how he went and got smashed with our compliance officer over the weekend. He doesn't drink. No bro, the CO got like so wasted that he forgot that he didn't drink. It's just logic bro. I was on a plane next to a middle-aged guy who seemed to be living a bit of an alternative lifestyle, nothing too out there, but we were talking about why it's faster slower flying east-west and I told him it was because of wind. He said, no, he was pretty sure it was due to the rotation of the earth. That when you're flying with the spin you go faster and against slower. When you fly against the rotation you have to go so fast or else you just stay in the same place. I once attended a party where a drunken guest lectured my friend at some length on the supposed theological impact of the impending results of a high-profile science project, CERN. She even went as far as to argue and interrupt his explanations during the conversation. She assured us multiple times in slurred speech that she was very well informed and knew what she was talking about because 1. She is a lawyer and 2. She listens to NPR every morning on the way to work. My friend was exceedingly patient and eventually just gave up attempting to explain the facts and just listened until she ran out of steam. Unfortunately, she either could not listen long enough or was simply too intoxicated to understand that he was actually one of the lead scientists involved in the project itself and had been involved pretty much from the onset of the program experiment. But hey, she's a lawyer who listens to NPR, so there probably wasn't anything he could teach her anyways, right? Why did he think he could reason with a drunk person? Friend of mine, who is famous for facts from his butt, was describing the origin of the alcoholic drink the Irish car bomb, and proceeded to provide his own tale of rich historical lore on how the name originated from the epidemic of Irishmen who would consume Jager bombs while driving, and proceed to crash explode their vehicles as a consequence. Not surprisingly, this is only a single tile in the rich mosaic of stories he told over the years. Someone once told me that it would be ridiculous for them to have ever tried mashed potatoes because they weren't a vegetarian, while they were eating corn. I was once in CompuSer when I heard one guy talk to a friend of his. The guy talking was very reminiscent of Newman from Seinfeld, and he was telling his buddy Linux doesn't matter because Bill Gates bought Linux and now it's part of Microsoft. I considered walking over to give the guy some sane advice but decided that it would just take too long to correct everything that was wrong with that statement. That was around 2002. RIP Computer. The US Congress is just jam-packed with these instances, like the time a senator brought a snowball to the floor to disprove global warming. I wish poor people would just stop being lazy and work hard. If they weren't so lazy they wouldn't be in their situation, no matter how bad it is. Look at me. I worked hard all my life to get to where I am. 85% of the students in my pseudo Ivy League school. This one just makes me angry. When I was acting modeling more, I was out of town on a set for about a month. One of the extras came on set about week 2, I want to say, and asked to take a picture with the producer's Aston Martin because it was her favorite car. She then proceeded to write a book for aspiring actors and models on how to break into the industry after being an extra twice. Sean Connery would totally drive an Aston Martin. Sitting in some friend of a friend's truck smoking weed and chatting about cars, he said something to the effect of, "Yeah, I want a 70 Chevelle with a 40 80 60 90 with turbo, should put out like 1000 horsepower." As a guy who knows nothing about cars, that sounds about right. I was in the car with a friend who is learning to drive. She has a restricted, which, in NZ, is like the second stage of getting your license and allows you to drive a car by yourself and without having to have someone in the front passenger seat who has their full license. I should mention that many of our other friends are very wary of getting in the car with her if she's behind the wheel. It began raining but she did turn on her wipers. After a while, the whole window was covered in rain, making it hard to see. I mentioned to her that she should turn her wipers on so that it'd be easier to see. She insisted that she could see fine, and that I couldn't see very well as I was in the passenger seat and that her car model just caters to the driver. I had to turn them on for her after she complained that it looked like her windscreen was melting and looked like melting plastic, which of course was the rainwater that had started to slide down her windscreen. Anyone who says something like, "The Katana is clearly the best sword ever built. It can cut through solid steel and other swords, and never needs sharpening. It was folded over 1000x to make it stronger and is nearly impossible to break. It can cut through 3 people at once and deflect bullets. It's even better at stabbing than the European longswords. Best sword ever built. That's impossible, because all swords are, usually, better than one sword at another. It can cut through solid steel and other swords. It can't. Best case scenario is that there's a notch in the steel and your katana isn't completely fricked or majorly bent. Never needs sharpening. All swords need sharpening. This is no exception. It was folded over 1000x to make it stronger. Nope. Damascus steel, or folded steel, is a process in which several layers of a different type of steel, usually high carbon steel, are folded into each other, enough to get about 1000 layers, or 8 or so folds. This makes the blade stronger. However, katanas are not made out of Damascus. If you were to fold it that many times, each layer would be paper thin and actually weaken the product. Katanas were originally made out of poor quality pig steel and had large flaws in them. The flaws were spread out in the material via folding, which weakened the blade but removed large weak spots. Nearly impossible to break. This is just pure ignorance. It can cut through 3 people at once and deflect bullets. As for the people limit, it depends on how sharp the bat is and how strong the wielder is. As for deflecting bullets, it will bend instead of deflecting. Better at stabbing than the European longswords. Swords usually have 2 types of blades, curved or non-curved. Curved blades make cutting easier, but stabbing harder. Straight blades do the opposite. Katanas were very curved and had little to no stabbing point. And my favorite flaw, it's the size of a one-handed sword yet it requires 2 hands. TLDR. Basically are swords. I've never thought of a katana as especially curved when compared to, say, a scimitar, but I learned a lot from your post. All I knew about Damascus steel was it involved folding, and the fake Damascus kitchen knife I have is pretty. I'm really into auto racing. I grew up around going to different races, and I am happy to volunteer once in a while for a couple. I was trying online dating, and my racing addiction came up. This man was trying to convince me that he raced in one of the races I worked at. I was trying to get a name or a number so I could look him up in the program to verify. He was really hesitant to give any information for me to confirm. Finally, he hit me with my favorite line. "Oh, I just showed up. I thought I seemed like I was in the wrong place." Dude, you don't just show up. There is entry fees, practice, and months of preparing. It's literally on a single mountain road, which you pass through a toll gate to enter, with your credentials. I called him out on it. He started backpedaling, admitting that he was lying for attention. He was quickly blocked. Our chemistry teacher. She justifies her mistake by saying I specialized in inorganic chemistry. I don't know physical chemistry well enough. We were revising what we learnt in grade 12 during our first chem lecture in college. I suppose when you've studied too much it all becomes mashed up, especially if it's not your specialization. My maths professor who taught us probability told us he didn't remember a basic binomial formula because he didn't need to. A little late to this thread, but I sat with this guy in one of my classes during freshman year of high school. He claimed he was fluent in Russian. When he asked me what languages I knew, I said only English and was learning Spanish. He then told me that if you can speak Spanish you can speak Russian because everything Russian is Spanish backwards. Didn't spend too much time with him after that. Someone told me that there are millions of small black holes in our solar system and we can't see them because they are black. I calmly explained to him to form a black hole, you would need at least 5 or 6 times the mass of our sun, and if there were millions of them when one of them gets between the sun and earth we would see it. Then he told me we sent people on Mars and I noped out. I had a teacher tell me that the E2 R on post boxes stood for Elizabeth II Rex. I corrected him and said the R was Regina, since Rex is masculine. He disagreed. I called in a favor, and now he's rotting in the White Tower where he belongs. Cheerio old chap. How's the view from the Traitor's Gate? My math teacher 2 years ago that only helped kids that were already doing well and that kicked out a mother that called him out on it. He was a major butthole. If you weren't born with a decent understanding of math, it's too late to learn it now. When I was in junior high school I attended a teen Bible study group. One day they had a woman come in to preach to us. It started off pretty cool. She had a guitar and was telling stories. She really seemed down to earth and laid back. It was the first alternative style of religious teaching I had ever experienced. Then she told a story of how she met a young Muslim girl and started teaching her about Jesus. Then she continued to do so against this young girl's father's wishes, in secret. I remember thinking how uncomfortable I was with that idea. Something just seemed off about it. She got to this part in the story where the young girl says something like, I get it. I get Jesus' love and what he was trying to teach. I thought, okay cool, educating people religion is all well and good. But then she said she encouraged this young girl to inform her strict father of her conversion and proceeded to tell us that he beat her for it, but that it was okay because this minister had saved her. There was nothing else to the story. That was it. She didn't help the girl leave, or move out or deal with it. Oh, I made you an outcast in your own family? That's fine because, Jesus. She was more proud of herself for getting her concert number than the family life of this young girl. Now I'm not condoning what the father did to this girl, but what good did this woman actually do here? Jesus is mentioned all over the Quran, they're pretty into him. Out of the office. Me. I was talking to a guy I get along well with while we were working in a bar. We start talking about booze because, well, we're working in a bar. He leads the conversation talking about how he has a hard time picking out wine at the grocery store because it's all crap. I feel out his preferences and make a few suggestions based on what flavors he indicates he likes and what he was going to have for dinner. He responds by saying, yeah, that's cool, but I'm basically like a wine connoisseur. I've had people introduce to me $500 bottles of wine. Like, really good wine. I start to dial myself back because I just like my getting fricked up to taste decent. And I don't want to offend a snobby palate. But then dude follows up with, oh yeah, besides those ones you mentioned, what's that name of the one with the footprint on the label? Me. Barefoot? Him. Yeah, that's some good crap, too. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.